TransPennine Express's role on the railway has changed drastically since privatisation began, turning from a regional operator to providing the bulk of the North's intercity services, principally aided by the introduction of the Nova fleet. The Nova 1 for services between the North East, North West and Scotland, the Nova 2 for services between the North West and Scotland via the West Coast Main Line, and the Nova 3 for services between Scarborough, Middlesbrough and Cleethorpes between the North West of England. Our focus today is on the Nova 1 train set, which operates TPE's flagship route between Newcastle and Liverpool, although the reliability of TransPennine Express did mean that I did get more than I bargained for with this trip. So, join me in this video and we see as to why. And with that, let's get this show on the rails. Liverpool Lime Street is where this journey begins, located in the centre of Liverpool, and is the city's principal station. From the station entrance, we have a good vantage point of the city itself, not to mention the St John's Beacon viewing gallery, which, in my point of view, provides an ecstatic backdrop as you arrive into the city. As I pan the camera around and head inside, it would have been time for me to board my service, although, as we go inside, we'll soon see as to why that isn't the case. But first, a little bit more about the station itself. Liverpool Lime Street was opened in August 1836 and is the oldest operating Grand Terminus mainline station in the world that is still in operation. There are plenty of facilities to prepare you for your onward journey, ranging from essential goods such as WH Smith to delicacies such as Krispy Kreme. There are a total of 10 platforms in Liverpool Lime Street station, and strangely enough, only platforms 1 to 5 have electronic ticket barriers, with platforms 6 to 10 being unmanned. Whilst platforms 1 to 5 are served by Northern Electrics and TransPennine services, platforms 6 to 10 are served by other operators at the station, such as Transport for Wales, East Midlands Railway, and Avanti West Coast, who provide the principal link between the city and London, although some northern services can also be found here. Located just to the left of the entrance to Platform 1 is the entrance to the Merseyrail platforms at Platform A. As the name suggests, Merseyrail provides local services throughout the Merseyside region of the northwest of England, although it does span parts of other regions as well, such as Cheshire. Do keep an eye out on this channel for a video about Merseyrail, as their services are fantastic value for money, and their elderly trains are due to be replaced. My service for this video would have originally been the 10:54 departure to Newcastle, although, owing to current staff shortages with TransPennine Express, the service was cancelled, meaning I would have missed an onward connection. And at the time, it made me feel so mad I could have just... Right, and we're back. Apologies for that little delay, but as you can see, we are on the platform right now as a Northern 323 is arriving in. Because of the cancellation of the 10:54, I had to wait exactly an hour to catch the 11:54, which is right here, which is a Class 802 set, better known by the brand Nova 1, which was designated to them by TransPennine Express. A total of 19 Class 802s were manufactured by Hitachi at their Pistoia factory in Italy for use with TransPennine Express on services between Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle and Edinburgh, with the units being built between 2017 and 2019. The Nova 1 entered service in September 2019 on the Liverpool to Newcastle route, replacing the elderly Class 185 diesel trains, which, despite being in absolutely fantastic condition, are just not suited for the now intercity purpose that the route now provides. For this trip, I'm in first class, which, given the crowds of people in the background, seemed to be a smart move, especially given the cancellation of the service before this. A trick to find the first class carriage as the train arrives into the station is to look for the white mark located just below the headlight. Right, it's now time for us to board and take a look around, but first, let's have a look at standard class. Out of the 5 carriages of this train, 4 carriages consist of standard class seating, which is 2+2, featuring tables, although mainly airline style seating is present. As we enter our carriage, we start to have a view of the wheelchair accessible toilet, which, as the trip goes on, I'll be having a look at. For now, this is first class aboard the Nova 1, which is a 2+1 configuration. As I take my seat, let's have a look at our route today before we head off. Our route today covers a large chunk of the north of England, starting from Liverpool and working our way across the original Liverpool to Manchester Railway, built by George Stephenson in the 1800s, as far as Manchester Victoria. From here, we don't go along the traditional North TransPennine route to Huddersfield. Instead, we divert along the Calder Valley line to Brighouse, and then back onto the North TransPennine route to Leeds. We then go to York, and then finally up the East Coast Main Line, calling at North Allerton, Darlington, Durham, Chester Street, and finally Newcastle Central. Our scheduled arrival time into Newcastle is around 3 o'clock this afternoon. Whilst we are already an hour behind schedule, this should be a fun trip nevertheless, and I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am. And with that, it's time for us to head off and make our way down the Iron Road to Newcastle.
For your safety and security, this train is fitted with CCTV. Please keep your belongings with you or in sight at all times. If you notice anything suspicious, please speak to a member of staff or text the British Transport Police on 61016. If you see it, say it and we'll sort it. For the benefit and safety...
There are two main railways between Liverpool and Manchester. One runs via Warrington Central and is diesel only, whereas the one we're on now goes via Chat Moss and was recently electrified back in 2015. As previously mentioned, this line forms part of the former Liverpool to Manchester Railway, the world's first intercity railway, built by George Stephenson in the 1830s. On services between Liverpool and Manchester, TransPennine Express only served two intermediate stations, the first of which being Lee Green, located in St Helens in Merseyside. This is one of the line's newer stations, having opened in the year 2000. Newton-le-Willows is our last stop on the Liverpool to Manchester line, which, although principally serves the market town of Newton-le-Willows, it also acts as a feeder station for towns and villages in the area which no longer have railway stations, such as Golborne, Billinge and Haydock. The station also provides a link to the Haydock racecourse, meaning it can get pretty busy on race days. It's also worth noting that from the December 2022 timetable change, TransPennine Express will no longer serve this station and Lee Green, meaning that all services on the line by TransPennine will run non-stop between Liverpool and Manchester. Recent line upgrade work has enabled our train to go up to 90 miles an hour, an increase from the previous 75. This is despite the fact that we are currently running over Chat Moss, a large peat bog covering an area of over 10 square miles with depths ranging from 24 to 30 feet. This is probably one of the most famous obstacles in railway history, as this effectively could have grinded the work to construct the Liverpool to Manchester Railway to a halt, owing to its spongy and unwalkable terrain. Nevertheless, George Stephenson came up with a rather unique solution, which was to effectively float the line on a bed of bound heather and branches, which sank into the bog, following which layers of tar and rubble were added to provide a solid foundation for the line's construction. As can be seen, the line is still standing today, with no trains having sunk yet, despite the fact it currently carries trains which are over 25 times the weight of the original steam locomotive to run on the route, which is George Stephenson's rocket. As we approach Manchester Victoria, we can now be seen passing the Ordsall Cord, which opened in December 2017 in an attempt to provide much needed capacity upgrades on the lines through Manchester, although, as evidenced by the May 2018 timetable change, this failed to be the case, owing to the heavily congested Deansgate corridor being even more congested. Despite being constructed and opened in the 2010s, the project dates back to the 1970s, although was numerously rejected by the House of Commons. Initial services on the Ordsall Cord were provided by Northern between Manchester Oxford Road and Manchester Victoria, which then transferred to TransPennine Express thereafter as a divert and extension of their North TransPennine route, which runs between Manchester Airport and Victoria to Leeds, Newcastle and York amongst others. Our third station call is Manchester Victoria, and is one of 3 main railway stations serving the city of Manchester, the other 2 being Manchester Oxford Road and Manchester Piccadilly. Prior to 2014, Northern was the only operator of the station, which subsequently changed in 2014 upon the launch of TransPennine Express's revised Liverpool to Newcastle express service. From here, our bi-mode train switches from electric mode to diesel mode in order to traverse the long, botched electrified section between Manchester and York. Leaving Manchester Victoria shows the reason for our divert today from the North TransPennine route, which is due to electrification works as part of the TransPennine route upgrade. This does mean that our route takes slightly longer as we divert onto the Calder Valley line and stop at Brighouse instead of Huddersfield. Anyways, in the meantime, let's do a Know Your Seat. The seat overall is rather plush and comfortable, much more so than GWR's own Class 802. I also found the maquette design to be rather striking and very nice indeed. Foldable armrests can also be found at the end of each seat, but that's not all. There's also a foldable armrest towards the window side of the seat, which is something I was rather shocked at, especially considering how uncommon it is to find these on UK trains nowadays. I found the power sockets in first class to be rather advantageous, especially compared to standard class, notably due to their location, as well as the fact that they have USB Type A sockets, which provides greater flexibility to that offered in standard. I did find the seat recline to be rather stiff at first, although I eventually managed to get it working. To work this, just press the button and slide your bum forwards and backwards. Electronic seat reservations are present throughout the train. That being said, these were essentially nullified given the cancellation of previous services. Should these fail to work, there's a card holder located just above the seat for more traditional ways of displaying your seat reservation. One of the most annoying features I found with this train is the retractable coat hanger, which I did find to be rather fiddly, especially when putting on coats and bags. There are window blinds located in both first and standard class in order to block out the sun and any views, although, even though this is my first time on the Calder Valley line, I found the views to be absolutely spectacular and I want to take them in as much as possible. Case in point right here. If you're not in a massive rush and crossing the Pennines between Manchester and Leeds, I'd highly recommend the Calder Valley line as the scenery is absolutely fantastic. Perhaps a first for me is calling at Brighouse as opposed to Huddersfield, owing to diverts due to the TransPennine route upgrade. This is our first stop in the West Yorkshire region, with the name of the town originating from a building close to the bridge over the River Calder, with the name literally being an abbreviation of bridge and house. There is a catering offering on board TransPennine Express, principally serving light refreshments such as snacks and beverages. As for me, for example, I managed to get the complimentary first class offering, which is available to first class ticket holders at no extra charge. I went for a packet of crisps, an oats and honey biscuit, and regular refills of bottles of water, which of course is Harrogate Spring. After making a stop at Dewsbury, our next calling point is Leeds, which is the largest city in West Yorkshire and consequently sees a wide array of services stopping and passing through here. Platforms 15 and 16 are the ones typically used by TransPennine Express services that either stop or pass through here, although it's worth noting that they can use other platforms on an ad hoc basis, for example, when another platform is being occupied. A £161 million upgrade was recently done at the station, including extended platforms, a new Platform Zero, and a completely revamped station entrance. Shortly after leaving Leeds, we find ourselves passing through Neville Hill train depot, which is operated by Northern, having taken over from East Midlands Railway in 2021 when they retired their HST fleet. LNER's Intercity 225s have also been heavily maintained here since January 2021, when they vacated Bounds Green Depot in favour of the new Azuma trains, one of which we're passing right now. Strangely enough, the main line between Leeds and York was never fully electrified as part of the East Coast Main Line electrification project in the 1980s. Consequently, the electrified route ends here, and our train continues running in diesel mode as it has done since Manchester. The line is expected to be fully electrified though as part of the TransPennine route upgrade, as can be seen by the masts which are currently being installed. A little bit further north of here, our train changes to electric power as it approaches York Station. Our next major stop is York, which is a major hub on the East Coast Main Line and our route to Newcastle today, as we only have just over an hour before we reach our final destination. Both the city and the station are full of rich history regarding the railways, being home to the National Railway Museum. One thing I would also recommend is to check out the Costa Coffee here, which is actually the former York signal box. Owing to congestion, our current delay is around 8 minutes, meaning that our total delay, including the cancellation of the 10:54, is approximately 68 minutes. Not looking very good for TransPennine Express today. Almost immediately after leaving York, we find ourselves passing the halfway point between London and Edinburgh on the East Coast Main Line, operating at the train's top speed of 125 miles an hour, which, although can be achieved in diesel mode, the Class 802 is able to fully realise this speed much better on electric mode, as its performance and acceleration are far greater. Following a stop at Northallerton, our next station call is Darlington, and I'm sure you'll agree the design of this station is absolutely fantastic. This impressive station structure is a Grade 2 listed Victorian building and the winner of the Large Station of the Year award in 2005. The final thing to take a look at on this train is the toilet, of which I'm going to be using the accessible one as it's the closest one to my carriage.
Please lock the door.
Right, door locked, we can begin. I have to admit I'm really impressed with the cleanliness of this toilet, and it's something I would honestly not have expected from TransPennine Express, especially given the amount of people that are on board this service today. The soap's working perfectly fine, the tap flows exceptionally well, and finally, the dryer, it works relatively well. And with that, I'm going to give the toilet a massive thumbs up from me. Right, it's now time for me to head back to my seats and complete the journey to Newcastle.
Please lock the door.
The view of Durham Cathedral in the background can only mean that we are on the approach to our next station call of Durham. As you may have noticed, the railway through the town is actually elevated on a viaduct, which we're currently travelling over right now. The station acts as a major hub for LNER, TransPennine Express, cross-country and northern services along the East Coast Main Line, and is located approximately 14 miles away from our destination of Newcastle. Around 5 minutes later, our final calling point before Newcastle is Chester-le-Street. From here, we only have 10 minutes to go until our final destination of Newcastle. TransPennine Express serve the station every 2 hours on the Liverpool to Newcastle route, and I just happened to be on one of the services which called here. Otherwise, we would have been running non-stop to Newcastle from Durham. It's now time for a conclusion. Overall, I have to admit I was thoroughly impressed with the Nova 1 train set used by TransPennine Express. They really do give the company a sleek and modern look, which is really ideal for them as they move more towards becoming an intercity operator as opposed to a regional operator they were previously. Their increased capacity, as well as their higher top speed and bi-mode capabilities, make them very much more versatile and suited for the North TransPennine route between Liverpool and Newcastle compared to the Class 185 trains they've replaced. I do have several criticisms, however, in that the ride quality is nowhere near as good as the Class 185s that previously operated the route. Second of all, in that the capacity was not very much suited, given that many previous services were cancelled before boarding this one. That being said, because of the cancellation of my previous service, combined with a 10 to 15 minute delay on this service, I was able to refund the full cost of my first class single. So that was pretty good. But that being said, I did get the first class single at exceptional value for money as it was. But I do have to admit that TransPennine Express really do need to get their act together, as this isn't the first instance that's been happening this year in terms of their poor reliability. Well, anyways guys, that's it from me, and welcome to Newcastle. And there we go. A trip fully funded by TransPennine Express Delay Repay, who after an over 70-minute delay have agreed to cover the cost of my £40 single. Isn't that very much nice of them? Well, anyways guys, I really do hope you've enjoyed the video today. If you did enjoy the video, please do give it a like as well as share it, as that really does help the channel to grow. If you're new to the channel and want to see more content such as this, why not consider subscribing as well as enabling notifications, as I'm now uploading new videos every Friday at 5 PM. And just in the nick of time, my revised connection back to York has just arrived, as I won't be able to make it to Sunderland to catch my original service back to London. So, on boards we go, with over 30 seconds to spare before departure. Well, anyways guys, until the next video, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next Friday at 5 PM. Goodbye.